"We didn't order for your son," my sister said, sliding the bread basket toward me like a peace offering she didn't mean. Her kids were carving into $100 steaks, plates gleaming under warm restaurant lights. My son, 8, quiet, polite, sat there watching them, hands in his lap. Dad added without looking up, "You should have packed him something." The air went still. My son's face dropped, but he didn't say a word. He just stared at the bread like it was his last option. I smiled. Not the kind that reaches the eyes. "Noted," I said. When the waiter returned, pen poised, I stood up. My voice carried enough weight to stop nearby tables mid-bite. "I'll take the private room. And whatever the chef recommends. For everyone here, on me." My sister blinked. "What?" But I was already walking with the waiter. Because that night wasn't about the meal. It was about the setup. They'd humiliated my son to remind me where I supposedly stood. They had no idea I'd been planning to redraw that line permanently. Growing up, my sister was the favorite, sharp-tongued, charming when it suited her, cruel when it didn't. She'd been handed everything. Tuition, cars, Dad's connections. I was told to make my own way. I did. While she flaunted borrowed money, I built quiet wealth. Consulting work, real estate, and a portfolio under an LLC name no one recognized. But I never flaunted it. I paid for family vacations anonymously, covered Dad's medical bills, and even bailed my sister out when her boutique failed. She never thanked me. She just found new ways to make me and my son feel small. This dinner, her idea, was supposed to be family bonding. But when she handed my son that empty bread basket, I saw what it really was, another performance of power. Only this time, the audience was about to change. The humiliation didn't start at dinner. It began months earlier. It started when I discovered the family trust that Dad had set up, supposedly for future generations. Except, the paperwork had my sister's name. Only hers. The accountant, an old friend, told me off record. "She convinced your father you weren't responsible enough. Said you'd waste the inheritance on charity work." Charity work. That was her word for feeding my son. That same week, Dad sold a property I'd managed for years, quietly behind my back. The proceeds? Reinvested into my sister's new venture, a luxury catering company. When I saw the logo, embroidered on her kids' napkins at dinner, I realized she wasn't just eating steak. She was feeding off what she stole. That night, watching my son tear a piece of bread in half to make it last, I decided she'd never touch another cent of that trust. Not while I was alive. Not ever again. I didn't shout. I didn't storm out. I started listening. My sister bragged openly about her investors, her expansion, her exclusive clientele. Dad beamed like a proud sponsor. So I asked casual questions. "How's the business structured? Who handles your contracts?" She thought I was impressed. She told me everything. Turns out, her catering company's biggest client was a corporate events firm, one I partially owned through a shell entity. All it took was a quiet call to my partner, a subtle reallocation of future contracts, and a clause in the fine print that would require background checks and financial transparency. Her company didn't survive the audit. Within a month, the investors pulled out. Within 2, her kitchen lease was terminated. And within 3, her name appeared in a civil notice for unpaid taxes. Dad called me furious, claiming she'd been sabotaged. I told him he might want to check who her accountant was. Same one who'd quietly helped me buy out the trust. Legally, cleanly, irreversibly. By the time he realized, it wasn't a family fund anymore. It was a charitable trust, under my son's name. The night of the dinner was no coincidence. It was the closing act. While my sister ordered another bottle of imported wine, I got up and excused myself to make a call. That call went to the restaurant manager, the same man whose wedding my firm had sponsored. "Tonight's family dinner," I told him. "Make sure the private room is ready." Minutes later, the waiter reappeared. "Sir, the chef would like a word about your table." I nodded and rose. The manager led me to the private suite, mahogany walls, warm lighting, an empty table set for 10. Perfect. Then I returned to the main dining area and spoke loud enough for every ear at our table. "Excuse me," I said, placing my card on the table. "Dinner's on me. The full order. And the staff. Kindly move our seats to the private suite. My son deserves an actual meal." The waiter hesitated. My sister laughed, unsure if it was a joke. It wasn't. As we entered the private room, the staff rolled in dishes she couldn't pronounce, premium cuts, hand-prepared sides, the kind of presentation she'd only seen in magazines. Her kids stared, slack-jawed. She whispered, "You're showing off." I replied, "No, I'm just feeding my family." When the bill came, she tried to peek at the amount. The manager politely stopped her. "This meal's already cleared by our corporate account, ma'am." She frowned. "Corporate account?" I smiled. "Yes, one of your old clients, actually. The events firm that stopped renewing your contracts." It took her a few seconds. Then her face drained of color. I leaned forward. "You remember that company? You used to brag about them. You catered their gala." She nodded, silent. "I own it," I said softly. "And as of this quarter, your debt's been acquired by the same foundation that owns Dad's old trust." Dad looked up. "What foundation?" I turned to my son. "His." My sister's voice cracked. "You wouldn't, I already did." The silence was suffocating. She tried to save face. "You set me up." "No," I said. "You set yourself up the day you treated my son like he didn't belong at his own family's table." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies, purchase confirmations, legal transfers, tax receipts. Everything legitimate. I wanted her to see how thorough I'd been. Dad skimmed the papers, face pale. "What's this?" "Proof," I said, "that the trust is no longer in your name or hers. It's now under a charitable educational fund for low-income kids." My son looked confused. I put a hand on his shoulder. "That means kids like you'll never have to eat bread while others have steak." My sister stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "You're insane." I shrugged. "Maybe, but I'm the only one who still pays the bill." When she stormed out, no one followed. Not even Dad. After they left, my son asked quietly, "Was it bad that I was hungry?" I knelt beside him. "No, son. It was bad that they forgot what family means." He nodded, then smiled faintly when dessert arrived. A chocolate souffle, still warm. As he ate, I watched him, realizing that revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about correction, about teaching people the cost of cruelty without ever raising your voice. Outside, I could see my sister pacing by her car, phone pressed to her ear, the same phone she used to mock me in family chats. Now, she was calling Dad, probably begging him to fix what she broke. But Dad wouldn't help this time. He couldn't. Because the man she thought she'd outsmarted, the quiet one at the end of the table, had been holding the real menu all along. And tonight, he finally ordered what was long overdue: respect.